Good morning, everybody. Good morning. A very warm welcome. It's my honor and pleasure to welcome you to this 10th edition of the ASTP EU Forum. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Art Bos. I'm the president of the board of ASTP. And in that role, it's my pleasure to welcome you here. On behalf actually of the whole ASTP community, of course, ASTP is an association for members, but also very much by members, run by members. And of course, also on behalf of our distinguished speakers and our moderators today. But also warm welcome on behalf of our people behind the scenes. And again, immediately my great thanks to the people behind the scenes who are making all of this possible, both logistically and technically. So a 10th edition, it's a great milestone, a wonderful achievement, and also, again, a great program today with excellent topics and distinguished speakers. Also, again, many participants from all over Europe and maybe even a bit broader. We'll see who joined when you have that overview. I have one logistical request. If and when you have questions or comments, you can put those in the Q&A section on the right. There's also a chat section, but we specifically ask you to use the Q&A section for any comments and questions that you raise. With that, I would like actually to give over to our moderator of the first session, Hanna Kosova. Thank you for moderating the first session, Hanna. Over to you.
Great, Art. Thank you very much for the introduction. Warm welcome, good morning to everyone. And it is my pleasure today to open up the 10th ASTP EU Forum and welcome our first speaker today, who's Lisa Wetzig from the European Commission. Lisa works actually as a policy officer with E2 unit, which is a unit we know pretty well because their topic is knowledge valorization and currently a new edition technology or research infrastructures. And we asked Lisa and are very glad that she accepted this invitation to talk about the most recent developments with regards to knowledge valorization policies and the new acts by European Commission, which are in the pipeline. So Lisa, welcome, and the floor is yours. I think there will be space for some questions and answers after the presentation, so please feel free to write these down in the Q&A session of this online space. Thank you very much. Lisa, please.
Thank you. And just to be sure, do you hear me now?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, because I have a bit of an issue with hearing you on the other side, but I'll try my best to maybe move closer to the device, so don't be confused if I'm too close to the camera. Thank you very much for welcoming me, the whole team of ASTP, and especially you, Art, and Hanna for moderating. And I would like to share my presentation, actually. There we go. So that it will be easier to follow what I will be sharing with you. And I was told like this, you can best see the slides. A quick confirmation may help me. There's a thumbs up. That's excellent. Okay, my name is Lisa Wetzig, and as Hanna said, I'm a policy officer in the unit working on knowledge valorization and technology infrastructures. My presentation will focus on the knowledge valorization part, while a later session will be with my colleague on technology infrastructures. And I will be presenting the policy and how it can relate to the upcoming proposals of the European Innovation Act and the European Research Area Act. And just to give you a quick overview, what I would like to touch upon, the wider political context in which we operate with this policy, then the policy itself, which many of you might be quite familiar with, but just as a catch-up in case it's not for everyone a known policy. And then also a quick round on the ERA policy agenda, our main instrument with which we further progress this valorization policy. Some quick resources for you I will give in the context of the Knowledge Valorisation platform, and then I will come to the upcoming proposals for the European Innovation Act and the ERA Act, and how we can relate to it with the Knowledge Valorisation policy. And of course, starting off with the political context, where we can take a look at the Commission priorities 24-29. Here we have a very good basis to work on, because the priorities put R&I at the heart of our economy. And following on that, we of course have all received and probably read the multiple pages on the Draghi report, the future of the European competitiveness. That is making an analysis, especially that is also relevant for knowledge valorization. So he is pointing to the weak interaction between academia and industry, and the insufficient awareness of the potential of these collaborations. He's also pointing to fragmented IP policies and the landscape in general. So not only the policies, but also the implementation. And as a third point, also to under-resourced intermediaries such as TTO and others. And as a response to that, the Commission has put forth the Competitiveness Compass, which is a roadmap to address exactly these issues raised in the Draghi report, and has this one pillar dedicated to closing the innovation gap. That is the aim that we're pursuing at the moment. And this is also laying the ground for these horizontal initiatives like the European Innovation Act and the ERA Act, as well as more vertical thematic ones, let's say. And of course, overall, it has in mind to support the development and adoption of new technologies and simplifying rules, including conditions for startups and scale-ups. And you may ask, where does knowledge valorization come in this big picture? And I can share that the knowledge valorization policy is very much in the spirit of these priorities and responding to these strategic reflections, because it is the critical bridge between the research market and society. So what is knowledge valorization? The concept is most accessible for French speakers, I would say, because valorization is a term we borrowed from the French language, but it also comes with a definition, of course. It is quite a mouthful of a definition, as you can see, but like this, it's also quite comprehensive. So knowledge valorization is the process of creating social and economic value from knowledge by linking different areas and sectors, and transforming data and research results into sustainable products and solutions that benefit society in terms of economic prosperity, environmental benefits, societal progress, better policy making. As I said and promised, quite a mouthful, but I personally really find the essence in the first line, so creating social and economic value from knowledge, and in noticing the paradigm shift that we put forth with this policy. It's a paradigm shift, I think, in two dimensions. One is the aspect that you can find in the second line, linking different areas and sectors, because this policy is involving all R&I actors as knowledge producers and knowledge users. And with this, it is revising the 2008 recommendation that was rather limited to technology transfer in the traditional sense from academia to industry. And this is something that we found clearly outdated and not reflecting the diverse reality we have in the R&I ecosystem. And then also the second part of this paradigm shift I find in this aspect in regards to intellectual assets and recognizing them. Because the previous framework really focused on the protection of intellectual property rights, while now we're more focusing on intellectual assets, how to identify them, manage them, and where applicable, protect them or exploit them. So with this, it is quite a broadened scope, and this is of course necessary to close the innovation gap. These definitions, in terms of knowledge valorization and intellectual assets, are part of the 2022 guiding principles, which are the cornerstone of our knowledge valorization policy. And the guiding principles lead the way how to transform knowledge and R&I results into solutions that have economic and societal benefits. And these principles, they address policymakers at national, regional, and local level to create the enabling conditions for R&I in order to do valorization. And then as a second step, and to support the practical implementation of knowledge valorization, we have adopted these 4 codes of practice. They are based on practitioners' experience and their input in order to guide elements of valorization, such as intellectual assets management, such as standardization, such as industry academia co-creation and citizen engagement as well. And this whole package of Council and Commission recommendations is, of course, flanked by further awareness raising that we do, the way that we support the sharing of best practices. And as I said already, it does not stop here, because we committed also with the member states to further upscale knowledge valorization capacities and activities. And the main instrument to do so is the ERA policy agenda. And within the ERA policy agenda, now the version 25/27, knowledge valorization is a structural policy. So this is a longer term endeavor that we're working on together with the member states, also beyond this time frame, this mandate 25 to 27. But in this time, there's 4 activities that we're focusing on. One being intermediaries, and I assume that many of you may identify as such. And here the goal that we are trying to achieve is to map the roles and skills of intermediaries, such as technology transfer offices, science parks, in order to support the capacity building in a similar exercise how research management competence framework was developed. A second activity is more focusing on improving the access to intellectual assets and developing a EU framework for responsible licensing. The third activity would be focusing on strengthening knowledge valorization skills. And here the aim is to develop a pan-European learning lab for value creation, which is an educational concept with very hands-on training for researchers and students in mind. As a fourth activity, we have the uptake of multidisciplinary results. And here we want to support stakeholders with the policy guidance that will build on and really support the dedicated community in these fields in order to increase the uptake of these kinds of results, while not only focusing on technological development. And as a last one, rounding up this ERA policy agenda for knowledge valorization is the measurement framework, because here we seek to integrate metrics and indicators reflecting the diversity of knowledge valorization activities in order to also measure the performance of member states in terms of valorization at EU level. And this would be, of course, aligned with wider ERA monitoring. And while I have this slide open, I'm of course very interested also in your thoughts, and maybe this is something we can pick up in the discussion, because these kind of initiatives, they really live from your inputs, and thus I would really like to hear what you think is needed, what works and what does not work in practice. And of course, also beyond the discussion today, we also always provide regular opportunities to exchange. We provide updates on policy developments and the like. And for this, I would like to, there we go. For this, I would like to point you to the Knowledge Valorization platform. This is a space where we communicate, for example, surveys or events, where we provide updates or deep dive articles on specific trends or topics in relation to valorization. We also there have the Knowledge Valorization Talks, which is a webinar series. Here I also indicated for you the next date to already mark in your calendars. And of course, we also have a best practice repository where stakeholders can share own initiatives and learn about those of others. And I can recommend you also to stay in touch via our newsletter in order to always get the latest news on the new developments. And yeah, I would just like to leave you with these links without further ado. And then move on to contextualize how the KB policy can relate to the upcoming proposals for the European Innovation Act and the European Research Area Act. You may have noticed that I'm very often already abbreviating the European Research Area Act, so please excuse ERA Act. It is what I'm often making it to be. And yes, no, this we will skip. There we go. Both acts can relate to knowledge valorization policy because, as I just said, valorization is really bridging research and innovation, while these acts aim to improve the framework conditions for researchers, for example, in the ERA Act, and for innovators in the European Innovation Act, respectively. And already making this distinction is quite a crude generalization, I would say, because there's not a knife-sharp distinction who is being regulated or for whom the framework conditions are improved in which act. So as both concern the wider RNI ecosystem. But here I would like to start with the European Innovation Act because its adoption is the one that is planned first. So for Q1 26, together with the 28th regime. And the idea with this one is to improve the conditions for European innovative companies, including startups and scale-ups, and to ensure the uptake and diffusion of innovation across the EU single market. And with the word uptake, you already see the link to knowledge valorization. While this act will not focus on a specific sector, so it is sector agnostic. However, it will of course complement sector-specific measures, for example, in relation to biotech. And the aim with this act to be proposed is to address legal barriers as well as to improve the finance and investment conditions for innovative companies. One may think of creating a framework for regulatory sandboxes or enabling procurement in order to promote innovation. And of course, this can be relevant for knowledge valorization, as the Act can also be used to address challenges in the relation to commercialization of research results and collaboration between academia, industry, and the public sector. And these are elements where, of course, we see a lot of fragmentation. So angles to address could be promoting institutional IP policies, strategies for spin-off creation, and licensing, having capacity building and incentives in place. So these are elements one may think of in relation to the European Innovation Act. And I have also here linked for you the now concluded call for evidence and public consultation, because there you can consult the outcomes, what different stakeholders say, which is quite interesting, especially in relation to the aspects on commercialization of research results, for example. And the second one is then the ERA Act with the adoption planned later in 26. Here the objective is to establish the fifth freedom as reflected in the famous report by Enrico Letta, the free movement of research, innovation and knowledge. And this is in order to tackle these persistent issues that undermine the efficiency and overall performance of the EU RNI ecosystem. And the idea here is to align RNI investment and policy between the EU and member states. So here we can think of the 3% target and aligning strategic priorities. And of course, also improving framework conditions for researchers and safeguard fundamental values. Think of scientific freedom, ethics, gender equality, equal opportunities in general. And these efforts also aim to make Europe an attractive place for RNI talents and is therefore linked with the Choose Europe for Science agenda. And here, likewise, as for the Innovation Act, I have linked for you the concluded call for evidence and its outcomes. And of course, also including the QR code, the still open public consultation. It is still open until the 23rd of January. So please, you are invited to respond to the questionnaire there. And I hope with this overview, I can stimulate our discussion a bit, as I'm very interested, as I said, to hear your expectations, hear what is needed in in the ERA policy agenda, the Innovation Act, the ERA Act, and as all of these can be very relevant input, not only to these acts, but also to the valorization policy and any other initiatives. So I'm very happy to be here and in exchange with you. And with this, I say thank you, leave our email address with you, for which you can always reach out, and give back to the floor to Hannah.
Lisa, thank you very much. Thank you for having shared the most recent initiative, which I believe is highly relevant for our community. And we already have 2 questions in the Q&A part. So I can see a question from Annette, our Vice President for Europe. And I will read it out. That we often see that universities are seen as responsible for successful knowledge valorization. Sorry, there was someone talking. So if you can please mute all the mics, that would be great. So basically, universities are seen as responsible entities for successful knowledge valorization, but Annette is asking about the role of industry. How do we involve industry players, and who should be their intermediary from your point of view, Lisa?
Mm-hmm. I think it's a very interesting question, because I also see that many of our stakeholders are from the research side. So, for example, very often universities, research organizations, while we also work with industry that shows interest in working together with academic knowledge and research knowledge. So who should be seen as their intermediaries? I mean, I think the field of intermediaries is very interesting, because there's more and more intermediaries coming up with different names and different functions and different missions as well. So we may traditionally think of knowledge or transfer offices that may have a link with industries that are partnered with the university, with the research organizations, but there's more and more different kinds of intermediaries. So not only rather traditional ones, but also science park, also individuals that are really good at connecting industry. More and more industries also have functions such as innovation management or open innovation management that can really bring in open innovation actors on an ad hoc basis, such as research knowledge, because very often traditionally this is rather something on the management level that of course also has a different daily business. They manage the work of this industry, but having also the capacity to have the eyes and ears open for what else is out there, for example, in the field of research, or and also making unconventional connections, because if an industry is working in the field of materials, they might not only link to material science, but maybe also to social sciences as well, or to whatever other sciences. So I think this is a very interesting field in development, what these intermediaries are. But of course, it should be a two-way relation in academia and industry co-creation.
Great. Annette, does it answer your question?
Yes. Thank you. It's I think it would be very nice to absolutely strengthen that relationship between the university side intermediaries and the industry side intermediaries, because I think, seen from our side, some innovations do get lost in industry, not being able to actually work really well with the uptake. And I think that is a huge responsibility, because the universities can only do so much. We can put it out there, we can make it available, we can ask the academics to help in the transition, but in the end, it is industry that needs to be really good at taking over from the universities and actually bringing new products, the final steps to the market. So yeah. That's going to be interesting to be working with them in the coming years to really get this kicked off.
Yeah, definitely a good point. I think there's a lot of translation to be made, maybe with the intermediaries on both sides that need to learn to understand each other's needs, language, timelines, etc.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. I will try to squeeze in one additional question following on what we've heard as an answer to Annette's question before we jump onto the state aid topic, which I think is also quite popular. But Lisa, when you spoke about the unconventional connections, relations, and the need to understand each other better, there is also a lot of talk about mobility and movement in between the sectors, in between academia, commercial companies, possibly also like the public domain. Do you envisage any special measures dedicated to this to enhance knowledge valorization and the uptake of new ideas?
I mean, in general, intersectoral mobility, especially between academia and industry, is something that we encourage via the guiding principles, as well as with the code of practice on industry academia co-creation. And this is one of the valorization channels, is one of the tools to do valorization, to have this exchange by mobility. So definitely we see a relevance there. I'm not aware of any specific initiative really implementing mobility itself.
Okay, so it was just an addition onto Annette's question, and now we can jump onto the hard topic of state aid, which I can see is receiving some votes in the Q&A priority list as well. So I think, Anwar, if we can please see the question, I will try to read it out in the meantime. It's by Bernadette from University of Cologne. That from industry, I heard that the State Aid Act is interpreted differently by science institutions all across Europe. So it might be helpful to add some practical examples or basically best practices, what works as a guidance for knowledge and technology transfer community. Do you envisage any kind of library of best practices for state aid in the context of knowledge valorization?
Yeah, indeed. Recently, there's been more and more questions on state aid, and I also understand that there's a certain uncertainty. Excellent. There's an uncertainty in this regard, and the exemptions for technology transfer. I must say I cannot detail examples for that on the go right now, but I can certainly pass it on to the colleagues that work on these things, because I do understand that stakeholders would like to understand better how things work, what works. So,
okay. And another question from Bernadette is about resources for KTOs, TTOs, that they are still limited. And question for you, Lisa, if there is a chance to earmark 5% of all research funding for knowledge valorization activities in the broadest sense. There was a discussion similar to this question in the Czech Republic not so long ago, because we had this under the policy support facility, a study dedicated to the innovation ecosystem in the Czech Republic. And one of the recommendations as the output of this exercise by a group of independent experts from different European countries was to consider to earmark some small percentage, it didn't say exactly 5%, to be solely dedicated to knowledge valorization activities. So I believe this talk is not unique to Germany and University of Cologne, but maybe there is something brewing up, like bottom up. So what's your opinion on this? I don't expect any formal policies to be in the pipeline, but it might be nice to hear what you think about it.
Yes, I mean, I think it's an interesting question, but the same applies for TTOs as for other intermediaries as well. that their setup is often very different. Like they might be associated to a university research association, they might be self-standing, there might be one regional one that is covering several research institutions, there might even be a national one. These kinds of things are also considered, or a one that is topically specialized. So I think that also makes a lot of sense to see from the perspective of projects whom to approach how, and where projects are situated, for example. But of course, it would make it for many projects for which valorization is applicable. Maybe it's not super interesting for very basic things, even though you should already start any research with valorization in mind. Like, where are you going, or where could you go? And if not yourself, maybe someone else. To have this in mind from the beginning on. This may help to, but this can also be something done at project level. I mean, project can do its own budgeting and see how to do this. So I think this freedom in the research activity is also something very important to respect there.
Okay, I fully agree that it's always a balance between the freedom of research and some other restrictions, including maybe security issues in the last couple of months and years, and more complex topics. We've got another question from Belgium, from Brussels University. If the EU is intending to define any standards or model conditions for licensing to startups and spin-offs, and what are the thoughts on that in terms of equity, participation, for instance, or other standards to be introduced?
Yeah. I mean, we also see across the EU a very varied picture when it comes to IP management and also licensing to startups, and that's why part of the European startup and scale-up strategy there is the Lab to Unicorn initiative, and part of that is a blueprint for licensing, which should be like a framework to as a model to inspire across the EU how to license to startups under what conditions. And this is also very much fueled by all kinds of inputs tried and tested. So this is something that is intended. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe additional questions. If you plan to focus specifically on enhancing the collaboration of academic research organizations like universities and, I don't know, the other public research institutes and spin-off companies. I mean, the companies somehow based on intellectual assets being created at the academic research institutions. Is there anything specific in the pipeline for this type of collaboration?
The collaboration between the research institutes from which the spin-off is emerging? I'm sorry, I'm not following.
Kind of, because it can link to the topic of research infrastructure and the technology infrastructure. So I believe maybe your colleague will tell us more about this, but to enhance the flow of knowledge and also exchange of maybe people and experience in general in between the research environment and more startup environment. And the previous question was about standards for this type of collaboration, which is, I think, slightly like double-sided coin. You've got some pros and cons for this topic. So if there is anything more specific in your plans for this kind of subtopic of collaboration arrangements.
Yeah. I mean, I would naturally assume that the spin-off emerging from a research university is in touch with its institution and the ecosystem around it, and but I think it's rather on an individual basis how this kind of relation is defined. So we have in mind the blueprint for the licensing, which is already putting a path for this specific kind of relation, but what the further aspects around it, I mean, it's also the question of access to services and infrastructures once the spin-off has happened. And I think this is something that my colleague Laurent will touch on also in terms of the technology infrastructures, because these are, of course, important facilities for startups to test their products and demonstrate the innovation that they have at hand.
Okay, thank you. And I think we still have time for a few more questions. We've got 2 more. I would like to go to the question about AI and possible usage of AI tools in accelerating knowledge valorization. Are you using this or planning to do so? It's a question which we now can see on the screen from the UK, from United Kingdom.
Yeah, I mean, especially the word exploring is the one that I will focus on with my answer, because yes, we are exploring the potential role of AI in valorization, because we see that it can have a huge potential in facilitating certain tasks in this in connecting this value chain from research to innovation, while also being guided, of course, by transfer and valorization professionals. And for example, there's several practices actually on our knowledge valorization platform where you can see some stakeholders that are trying out AI tools and that also share their experience for it. There's 2 universities in Dublin that are, for example, and testing that. And I mean, for any kind of input, maybe they might also be available to be contacted to hear more. But we also see there's more and more private providers coming up, and the need for an exchange of experience, what actually is behind those tools and models. So, and it's very difficult because, I mean, AI is a moving target, and especially when working also with intellectual property and intellectual assets, this is something very sensitive where you want to be cautious with AI. So this is very much an exploration task on what is possible and how AI can be harnessed while protecting what needs to be protected in this field. So that's very much it. And maybe I can also refer you to actually 2 of our knowledge valorization talks where we touched upon these topics. One is the recent one on intellectual property that was, was it in November? I think it might have been in November, yeah. And one of the early ones in June 24, where we also discussed the role of AI for knowledge valorization, as we think it could be very interesting. And yeah, this is also something we see further exploring, for example, with calls. So yeah.
Yeah, so let's see what the AI brings. And I think it may be quite a useful thing and definitely something to explore. So thank you for answering this one. And apparently the topic of potential percentage allocation for knowledge valorization activities is popular, because we've got another one which is slightly similar but a little bit different from the previous one from Wageningen University in the Netherlands, that we've got different TTO resources across Europe. And in the Netherlands, there is discussion whether the universities themselves basically should allocate a certain percentage of their own internal budgets to valorization capacity, which can go beyond the traditional technology transfer office role compared to research revenue. And also if there is any EU comparison on this approach.
I think this is a very interesting discussion because as outlined in the presentation that we see, intermediaries such as TTO, they lack resources and sometimes also the planning stability, let's say. So sometimes TTOs are also set up only on project basis, and that these professionals are are put into place and they don't have the stability to work sustainably and also increase their capacities. So it might be an interesting approach to be tested in the Netherlands if this is something that can help them build the capacity and also increase them and stabilize them. Because for TTOs, I think it's also very much a question of maintaining and then increasing their capacities very often, because there's more and more, I feel, with more discussion on innovation, and TTOs are being put more and more into the limelight. So definitely there's a need to dedicate certain resources to it. If I'm thinking of any EU comparison with this specific financing model, right now nothing comes to my mind. But maybe this is something I can also think about and pass on later. But these financing models are very different because they also have different missions and just different models, the way TTOs are set up across the EU.
Okay, thank you. And another thought following up on this question, because it was formulated that it might go beyond the scope of TTO responsibilities. And I think some colleagues are aware of the research management competence framework adoption earlier this year. And basically finding the right balance in between funding and resources, including human resources for research management and let's say knowledge valorization management. So we had some internal discussion within ASTP community, and I think it's reaching a compromise that it can't be split completely. It's more research and innovation management, and the resources should be allocated almost equally to both sections, like research and innovation, which we understand very closely linked to the topic of support of knowledge valorization and technology transfer in the more traditional way. Do you have any views on this link, more to maybe split of human and funding resources in between the two big topics, research and innovation support?
Yes. And I mean, the best would, of course, be if those go hand in hand as smoothly as possible, because they're just connected facilitators. But how exactly to divide which resources, which budget where, this is something very individual also on the capacities that are necessary on site, so to say. So I find it very difficult to make a very general statement on this. But I'm also very curious if you would like to share any written reflection on this relation between the research managers and maybe more the innovation manager intermediary side, because this is something, as I said, with the ELA policy agenda that we're very interested in. So please share with us what you have discussed. I think it would be very interesting.
We will definitely do. Don't worry, Lisa.
Excellent.
And I think we've got 1 last minute for one last question by Marieke. It reads, for their role as intermediaries, the academic institutions through their TTOs would need more resources on hiring skilled people and also more flexibility on finding the right partners. The question is if there is any discussion on exemptions on state aid regulations here. Linked to finding, I think, the right external partners for doing research organizations.
Yes. Focusing on the first part of the sentence, definitely. I mean, as said, more resources are needed, and also quite complex profiles that are almost. I mean, TTOs can be almost envisaged as an octopus doing all kinds of these different tasks at the same time, from IP management to business development. There's a lot of different aspects to it, so it also really requires very specialized profiles. And with this industry experience, standardization, there's a lot of things to do. So the question is maybe not only resources, but also how to efficiently link them maybe. And not only flexibility in finding the right partners, but also yeah, making sure to make the best of what is available. And in regards to the state aid question, same with the previous questions, I noted it down and will pass it on to the colleagues that can answer this question more proficiently than I would be able to. But yeah, it's an ongoing discussion on state aid. I see the interest in it.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm afraid we will have to close down the discussion. There is one more question by Joris from Delft, but I think this can be answered in a chat, not to take time for the next agenda item. So Lisa, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and being so open. We will definitely stay in touch, and maybe some of the answers can be shared with everyone else at the next ASTP EU Forum. So we will definitely be interested in some follow-up. So thank you again, and
Thank
I
you
am
very much.
giving floor back to our colleagues. I don't know whether Annette or someone else. So Lisa, thank you, and I will switch off myself. And if there are any more questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. So welcome to our next speaker, Laurent Aubres, who is also a policy officer from Unit E2. And now we're going to become a little bit more specific, and Laurent is going to take us into and help us understand the EU strategy for research and technology infrastructures, which we already touched a little bit on in the first session. So thank you for joining us today, Laurent, and over to you.
Good morning, colleagues. So indeed, my name is Laurent Aubres. I belong to the exact same unit as Lisa does. First, as an introduction, you may remember that our unit was called Knowledge Valorisation Policies and IPR. We are now called Knowledge Valorisation and Technology Infrastructures. Well, there is a link. It's not randomly that they reorganize and they change. It's a fact that technology infrastructure are instrumental for market uptake of technologies. Industry, being large-scale industry or SMEs, including startup and scale-up, they need technology infrastructure to test, to demo, to scale their technologies. So the idea that on one directorate we will have open science and research infrastructure unit, and that we will closely collaborate with them, being knowledge valorization and technology infrastructure, is based on that reasoning. No, we inherited from that file for the strategy for research and technology infrastructure that was previously built by colleagues. And now we are working on the first activity that will be the Charter of Access for industrial users to research and technology infrastructure. This is what I would like to present to you. Just like a small parenthesis for all the questions regarding state aid, there is a unit in our directorate that is specifically devoting time and effort on state aid questions. And maybe they will be the appropriate one to be invited for these specific questions because they can complement all the information that is available from DG Comp, but from the research and innovation perspective. So I will now share my presentation. I hope it works. So can you see the presentation?
Yes, it's not in presentation mode, but we see it.
Okay, so maybe there's something I can do for that. On my side, I see it full screen, but
I think it works
okay,
like
perfect.
this as well.
So let's start first with the European Strategy on Research and Technology Infrastructure. Well, what is the policy context here? If it works, it doesn't work. I'm sorry for that. Okay, it's frozen. Sorry.
That's okay, no worries.
I'll try again.
Yes.
Okay, does it work?
Perfectly. Yes.
Finally.
Thank you.
Sorry for the delay. So, what is our policy context here? Well, there was the letter report. We need to strengthen research innovation and research infrastructure to establish, this whole technology infrastructure context. Draghi report: invest in research infrastructure and technology infrastructure, cornerstone of EU long-term competitiveness and technology development capacity. It seems obvious, but yes, we need to. The ATO report: secure long-term investment in world-class research infrastructure, technology infrastructure, and develop pan-EU strategy for TIs. This is where comes the strategy. So we had ERAC opinion, we had different council conclusions, and this strategy that was adopted on the 15th of September, as announced by our commissioner, is ambitious, coordinated European approach to research and technology infrastructure. And this is the point. It's an holistic approach. It's not about having research infrastructure on one side and technology infrastructure on the other side, but to build synergies and to put research and technology infrastructure at the service of the innovators and not only the researchers. So strong accent to put on startup and scale up. What is the objective of the research and technology infrastructure? Well, to transform it into a backbone for the arena ecosystem, indeed. It's part of the Choose Europe initiative. It's a pole of attraction for global talent. We need this research and technology infrastructure to keep in Europe and to attract from outside Europe this talent for research and innovation. This is one of the producer of high quality research data, and especially in the international context, we need to ensure that we can still produce high quality basic science results, and all research infrastructure are key to that. And last but not least, this is an enabler for deep tech innovation, and of course, it supports European technological sovereignty. The strategy itself, it builds on blocks. So 22 actions, but first, capacities and investment to develop, to build on digitalization and AI. There was in the previous presentation a question about the synergies and the potential of AI. It's clear that this is key with research infrastructure, not only for research and innovation purpose, but also in the exploitation of these results. The accessibility of this research and technology infrastructure, and later we will come back to the accessibility issue and opportunity. Again, attracting and growing talent. These are a magnet for researcher, this research and technology infrastructure, and we need to maintain this situation and even to improve this capacity. Governance framework. 3 actions in the strategy are dedicated to improving, to put effort so that the governance mechanisms for research infrastructure are even better and fit for purpose, to create a proper governance for technology infrastructure. Oh, did I lose the presentation? Okay, back. Sorry. The governance for technology infrastructure to be made, and last but not least, an overarching mechanism to create synergies between research and technology infrastructure. And last block of this strategy was the international dimension. So not only with aspect with science diplomacy, but consolidating the strategic importance of EU in research and innovation and the resilience. This is for the European strategy adopted on the 15th of September again. So let's consider that this is something that we all know about, but no, let's move to the next step. Aside the strategy, there was another strategy, the EU Startup and Scale-up strategy. And in that strategy, there is a specific block regarding research and technology infrastructure, with the idea of facilitating the access for industrial users to research and technology infrastructure. There was, again, a question in the previous discussion about how to facilitate access for startup, scale-up, spin-off, SMEs to these services and infrastructure. Well, this is the purpose of this charter. So, in the EU Startup and Scale-up strategy, there is first this call to develop the charter of access for industrial users. Align conditions, reduce barrier of access for innovative startup and scale-up. But this is not the end of the way. On this charter, the Innovation Act to come, European Innovation Act, will further promote the access to innovative companies, and there it will be through legislative measures. And this is why it was so important to have a proper charter with principles that the entire community of research and technology infrastructure could agree on, and to be sure that it will serve industrial users, all industrial users, because from the different expert groups, reports, and consultation we had in the past, it was clear that there is no one-size-fits-all for research and technology infrastructure regarding the needs of the users. Large-scale industry and spin-offs or SMEs could have different needs, and it was demonstrated. So the idea is first the charter, then Innovation Act in the continuation. The scope of this charter. We made an analysis from the different consultation expert group conference we had for the last 2 years, and we looked at what is necessary for the industrial users to have a better access to research and technology infrastructure. And when we say a better access, the idea is that they can use research and technology infrastructure to go faster to market with better product, more adapted to their customers. So first of all, an increased visibility and availability of service. I will go back to each and every principle in detail, you will see. Transparency and quality of services, simplified contract and agreement procedures, safe intellectual property management, priority to companies established in the EU, and cooperation between infrastructure and access to data. By cooperation, we mean cooperation between the infrastructure, being research and technology infrastructure or technology infrastructure together. So the first principle that was exposed, they should adopt a proactive approach to increase their visibility, because we noticed from the different consultation that most SMEs don't know exactly what research and technology infrastructure can bring to the solutions they are looking for. So first of all, it's about awareness. There are research and technology infrastructure. We have this world-class ecosystem, but they can provide services. And these services not only are not, well, they are accessible, and they can be really meaningful for market uptake. So this is the, let's say that you will see these different principles in the order of importance that you receive from the previous consultation, but I'll come back to that later. Second, transparency and quality of services. For some stakeholders, for some SMEs, research and technology infrastructure can look like black boxes and they have no idea how it works. So we want to ensure that they know exactly what they will get from the services provided by research and technology infrastructure, and there is no doubt about the quality of the service. And this is coming in complementarity. There was a charter for researchers to access research infrastructure that was revised 18 months ago, I believe. This is in complementarity. We need to ensure that the services are at a certain quality standard. It seems obvious, but it has to be stated to reassure the potential users. Simplified contract and agreement procedures, something we cannot afford in this context where there is a strong need for competitivity, that we need to maintain our technical sovereignty is to waste time with long procedures when not necessary. So of course, sometimes it's necessary to pay quality time to establish a contract or agreement procedure, but everywhere it can be facilitated and streamlined. This is one of the principles of this charter. And the idea is not to impose a model contract, but eventually to propose some standard paragraph for this contract that could be systematically used in order to reassure the potential users and to facilitate the contracting procedure. Safe intellectual property management, because this was a concern for a lot of SMEs when requested about the willingness to interact and collaborate with research and technology infrastructure. The question was always, yes, but as a startup, I have this technology, my invention, not yet patented. I will expose it to eventually my competitors or to a research and technology infrastructure host. Is there a danger that I will lose my intellectual property or my competitive advantage towards my competitors? And of course, it could seem obvious to us that no, there are proper disclaimers and legally binding contracts that are in place and that the intellectual property is protected. But it's not, obviously, for the users. So we need to reassure them, and this is one of the objectives of this charter. When you will interact and collaborate with the research and technology infrastructure, it will be clear. And again, this is not to impose one way to do it. This is about clarity and transparency regarding the intellectual property management. So you know exactly what to expect. Priority to companies established in the EU. Here could read a bit tricky. This is not about imposing a priority to EU companies. This is about giving the possibility to research and technology infrastructure to have preferential treatment for some companies when they are established in the EU. And aside this preferential treatment, it could be considered that this is regarding the fees or the priority to access to the infrastructures. Again, here the idea is not to impose EU companies first. And then the last principle that we wanted to build on was the cooperation between the infrastructures and the access to data. And it encapsulates a lot of different type of interaction. It goes from interoperability to sharing catalog of services, or just how to establish the exchange of data. And then, okay, it will raise the question: are research and technology infrastructure supposed to share data? There is a principle about safe intellectual property and preserving competitive advantage. Yes, of course, when it's established that data will stay confidential, they stay confidential. But when these data are supposed to be shared, the principle is about having it according to the FAIR principles. So if data are shared, they should be shared the proper way. That's the idea. And for research infrastructure, especially, it's really important. So this was about the Charter of Access. Yesterday ended the consultation, the open consultation. I have the number of the participation. It's about 250 research and technology infrastructure public organization, intermediaries, or industry representative who contributed. They were really positive regarding these principles. And we already have a critical mass of research and technology infrastructure hosts who will be ready to endorse such charter. And the idea is that based on their willingness, they will try at best effort to implement measures internally to align with the principle of the charter. And in parallel, European Commission will deliver some more advanced guidance regarding the principle, some support, and will contribute to outreach and awareness raising regarding the principles of the charter. As previously said, there is an intention to build on this charter into the European Innovation Act. So of course, the consultation will fit the Innovation Act, and the Charter will serve as a foundation for more legally binding measures to be expected. So that's it for the Charter of Access and the strategy. And now I'm ready for your questions.
Thank you, Laurent. I think I have just an opening question. Is there a definition of what constitutes an infrastructure? Is it large-scale, cyclotron, pan-European things, or is it that we have, let's say, banana flies, that you can, is it everything, microscopes, everything that we have at the universities of different kinds, do they constitute infrastructures, or is there a sort of a minimum size of what an infrastructure is? Because it varies enormously and we have so many different things available at the universities.
Indeed. So there are definitions, multiple definitions. Maybe that's an issue or an opportunity. So in the strategy, you have proposed definitions for research infrastructure and for technology infrastructures. You can imagine that with an act coming, there will be further definition. And let's not enter the battle of definitions. You know that definition for state aid regulation are even slightly different. That we had different expert groups recommending, let's say, an aggregated definition. This is coming, and I will not enter or read the definition, but it's not about the size. Let's say it's about the intention, and it's not about the capacity. And how to say, let's off the record consider that there should be way more technology infrastructure than research infrastructure if we do the inventory, the mapping. By the way, this is one of the action of the strategy, to map the capacity in the European Union. And we could be surprised by the number of technology infrastructure, because technically a living lab, it's a technology infrastructure. So in that aspect, no, there is no size that will define the infrastructure, as long as its purpose is to allow user to test, to demo, to scale, and basically to bring their technology to market or to policy.
Yeah, thank you. Robert, do you have opening questions?
Yeah, this is very exciting, and for several years the awareness is growing and the importance of this subject is growing. Community of tech transfer, we need more specific information, so especially for example, what driving force, how do you want to make the most efficient driving force for making this is something what we would like to hear. What would motivate at most these research institutions to make this infrastructure available? How do you like to make it? For example, some, of course, pain for them if they do not agree to and make this infrastructures available. This would help to motivate them. Yes, so more practical. Of course, I understand very well this EU language, that this is quite general. It cannot interfere. It can not force for our understanding. How do you like to motivate? How do you like to catalyze this enabling of this infrastructure?
Yes. So I didn't get everything because the sound was, I don't know if it was just for me, but I was losing you from here there. But I understand that the question is about how to motivate research and technology infrastructure to align with this principle, to open the infrastructures to the ecosystem, and to be catalyst for innovation. Is that the question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Two aspects. It's about diversification of the customers first, and opening to new market, because some research and technology infrastructure by definition don't have to make profit or don't want to make profit, but others are supposed to. And in that aspect, they are always in the search for new customers who will say no, because they are a long waiting list to access these infrastructures. Yes, but it's also creating some extra, let's say, value to have interaction with other stakeholders that they don't have usually the ability to interact with. I'll take an example. I'm back from Grenoble. I was there 2 weeks ago, and we had really interesting discussion about in that particular aspect, multidisciplinarity, interdisciplinarity research with paleontologists going to the synchrotron. These are, in terms of pure research perspective, really fruitful collaboration that can be interesting and that are happening. Like the matchmaking is like naturally happening. So that's one aspect. But of course, for that, they need to open their infrastructures to the colleagues. So when it comes to the industrial users more specifically, well, for technology infrastructure, for most of them, it makes sense. And for research infrastructures, I don't like this, this separation between research and technology infrastructure and this siloification, because at the end of the day, most research infrastructures are also providing technology infrastructure kind of services. But let's say that it's easier and it can be useful to have this definition and this approach to establish guidance and this kind of principle. So yeah, indeed, the technology infrastructure are keen to offer their service and to have new customers. There is at the moment a problem with fragmentation in the EU regarding research and technology infrastructure. Not all SME can access all services because sometimes it's really far away from the premises, or the fees are not just accessible for them. So the motivation is about creating synergies between all of them. And we see that from the last consultation we had with that specific charter, there is a strong willingness. I have to confess, not that I was surprised, because I know that research and technology infrastructure hosts have at heart to support the innovation and well, the research activities in the EU. But such an enthusiastic follow-up of the principles that are proposed, where they consider that these are not always systematically fully aligned with their vision, but that they consider that all the proposed principles fit with the intention and the objective. I don't know if in terms of pure motivation, there is something to be done. But with this consultation, we had also a more open question on how would you like European Commission or member states to support these activities and to incentivize it and to give additional means or support so you can implement these principles. The analysis to be done, because again, the consultation ended yesterday and we started at night, but I'm afraid I cannot share conclusions with you yet. But this was where we were looking for insight on, well, how to incentivize, how to support, how to motivate them to align with the principles. But the motivation is there. I have to say, the motivation is there. There is not a single answer from a research or technology infrastructure or saying, no, I will not like to endorse a charter. Some of them say, I don't know, I need to see the detail, the exact details before signing with my blood. But at the moment, we see the objective and it aligns with our values. What is comforting.
Thank you, Laurent. We have a question from Joris at TU Delft. who says, great plan to better support startups and scale-ups by providing easier access to facilities. At TU Delft, we'd love to do so, but legal and finance these risks in state aid. And he gives an example that competition with commercial equipment rental companies. And how do we approach that?
Okay, so for the state aid, it's mainly about the, well, regarding technology, research and technology infrastructure, it's mainly about the initial investment. Again, I will not enter the state aid question because this is for my colleagues from Unit E1. But aside this announcement of Charter of Access and the plan to go for the EU Innovation Act with more legally binding measure, in the EU Startup and Scale-up Strategy, there is also a mention that if necessary, some clarification, some clear guidance will be provided regarding state aid rules. And there is currently an ERA action, that is ERA action 16 on another domain, but where there is a strong technology infrastructure pillar. And it's also in the context of this action that we will open, you may know, of course, you know, we do have a repository of best practices for knowledge valorization. You were instrumental with this repository. But aside this repository for knowledge valorization, we will open one for funding model and access model for research and technology infrastructures. And the idea is that, well, the rules regarding state aid are certainly perfectly clear and wonderful from the treaties, and colleagues from DGCOM are doing a great job about them. But sometimes it's not as we can understand from the consultation, properly understood in some context. And sometimes, well, the interpretation is the problem. So what we would like to do is to give examples, because something that worked in one given member state should work in another member states regarding the pure state aid rules application context. Yeah. So we will provide guidance, we will give examples, but I'm afraid that for the rest, it will be up to my E1 colleagues to enter the discussion.
Yeah, thank you. I really do agree that we need the state aid people involved in this, because I think that is going to be instrumental in making this work and getting to where we want to be with this, because it is something that we do spend a lot of time worrying about and trying to work out how we can do it. And I think also the question of how we structure the access to the to those research facilities or infrastructures. Is it through collaboration, or is it through that they buy access to something? Because the conditions that it can be done under and the management of IP differs whether it's one type of arrangement or another type of arrangement. And I think so part of also presenting, you could say, if each institution had a web shop of infrastructures that you could access, explaining the different models of accessing those infrastructures and the price structures and the consequences is very important. But we have another question here. Yep. Will research institutions have a legal obligation to provide some access to the research infrastructures for industry, particularly newly established companies, if they receive European funding for maintaining and or developing that infrastructure?
Well, that's an excellent, well, all questions.
That is a very good question, yes.
It is. This Charter of Access, well, let's start with the strategy. The strategy is a communication, so there will be no legal obligation from the strategy, of course. The Charter of Access, well, it's also a publication at this stage. And there will be no legally binding measure in the Charter of Access. It will propose to align values of research and technology infrastructure with that given principle that seems to make a consensus in the research innovation ecosystem. No, as said by the Startup and Scale-up Strategy, it will serve as a foundation to introduce legally binding measures in the European Innovation Act. I don't know at this stage what will be exactly in the European Innovation Act. But if such legally binding measure should happen, I could imagine it would be through the European Innovation Act. But then this is a question for comitology, for negotiation with the different stakeholders in the member states. It's an act, so it will apply in all EU. And at this stage, this is more a question for my colleagues developing the European Innovation Act at the moment. In the coming months, we will have more clarity of what this act will contain. What I can say is that this is not the purpose of the Charter of Access.
Okay.
Yeah, but you have to be aware that these research institutions are not very keen to share this infrastructure. Yeah. They would like to keep them for themselves. Or obligations, this would never happen. We already checked several for at least starting some comments, and they said still there is nothing which obliged us to make it available. So if this happens, if this appears, of course we will take the position in this, yes, but they are not going to the outside world saying, hey, please come with your projects. Yes, we are waiting for you. Nothing like that. Nothing like that.
I understand your remark, indeed, and it's an open market economy. But again, I'm not responsible for the European Innovation Act drafting at the moment. Some colleagues are working on it with the stakeholders, with the member states. And in that process, I just can talk about what I'm responsible for at the moment, and this is this Charter of Access. And in the Charter of Access, we encourage research and technology infrastructure, well, to offer easier access to the services. We do not impose anything. And I hear loud and clear your remark and contribution. Yeah.
I think just to add a little bit on that, I think maybe also sometimes that we are still caught up a little bit in many, certainly universities. I know there are other types of research institutions as well, but at universities, it's the very, very, the hundreds of years long tradition for doing research and education. And definitely in Denmark, where I come from, there is a discussion, and there's been a task force working this fall on strengthening and coming with recommendations to strengthen knowledge transfer. But I think that the whole idea of putting knowledge valorization and outside access to these infrastructures that traditionally have been considered, for research purposes and educational purposes. So it's another thing that brings sort of the third leg or the third mission of research institutions more into place. And that might be something to think about in the legislation as well, is how do we promote that third mission even more, because it's new relatively to the universities compared with hundreds of years of doing research and education.
No, absolutely. University third mission is key in that perspective, but again, and as you mentioned, it goes hand in hand with knowledge valorization. And all universities have their own tradition, their own perspective. From my personal example, I remember my professor at university who was telling me all the time he was wasting time doing education. He would have preferred to do only research. So I do not imagine what university third mission would have represented for him. But well, this is a trend that third mission is also really, really important. And we all know that there is currently this reform of the research career assessment, and that, well, all other activities seems to be taken in account regarding the assessment of researcher career, and it includes everything that goes toward third mission of universities. So I imagine this is the current trend, and I as a knowledge valorization convinced practitioner, I believe this is the way to go. personal
Absolutely.
level.
Yeah. Oh, we don't disagree. It is the way to go. Absolutely. But you've spoken about the consultation, and will there be any further involvement chances for us to bring our? Are you planning any further consultations or along the way, or is this it? So you'll be working on what you already have?
I'm afraid that regarding the Charter of Access, the open consultation is over. Well, if you have a last minute contribution you would like to send, feel free to do it, and be sure that we will carefully read it and take it in account, of course. But we had to put a deadline, especially because this is also feeding the work that is being made on the European Innovation Act. And in that aspect, it's important that colleagues on the Act know exactly what is coming back from the Charter. On the other hand, there is an ERA Act that is also coming, and for the ERA Act, the consultation is open, if I'm not wrong, till 23rd of January.
Yes.
So this is also an opportunity, because there is no such thing as research or innovation with no strong bonds and interactions. So what is not maybe planned in the Innovation Act could appear in the ERA Act.
Okay, thank you.
So time-wise, are you imagine any timeline for the first approach, first regulations in this subject of technology infrastructure access, that you are planning to introduce something next year or maybe another
next
year?
Next year,
Okay.
2026, because this is announced by the EU Startup and Scale-up Strategy. So the charter the work had to start on 2025, and it did. And that's why we are ready, certainly end of January, early February, to go and with the first research and technology infrastructure host who would like to endorse it, if they finally agree with the text. So this is something we can foresee. And then, 2026 for the European Innovation Act. So if there is some regulation, it will be, well, legally binding regulation, it will be to the Act, and the Act is foreseen early 2026. Well, it's an act, so you can expect to see a first draft, and there will be negotiations and comitology, and it will maybe not be for the next day, but you could expect to see it quite early in 2026. There is an emergency. I think everybody's aware of it, and we need to move on, and we need to move on fast. Informed, but fast.
So another question. Should we not incentivize universities and its researchers more into collaboration with industry by defining key performance indicators in which this is more highly valued in comparison to the traditional academic output indicators?
Absolutely. And this is well, you are all familiar, of course, with the guiding principle for knowledge valorization. And by definition, when we received to the ERA agenda this mission to go from the 2000 recommendation for knowledge transfer between industry and academia to the guiding principle, encapsulating the whole ecosystem, all kinds of activities and all kinds of knowledge, including tacit knowledge. This was the idea that we would go for also proper monitoring and other indicators. And these indicators, they fit all the activities that we do regarding research innovation, because we share with colleagues. So, for instance, there is a study that is concluding, and I know ASTP participated to some exchange workshop for the new metrics for knowledge valorization, building on the existing work that was done not only with GRC, but including with GRC in the recent years. So not only about knowledge transfer, but about other kinds of activities. And these metrics, these KPIs, we share with colleagues working on the research career assessment, because it's important that this is an horizontal issue. Today, a researcher who contributes to the effort participating to a hackathon or giving time in a living lab, or well, deciding to go for industry academia mobility, and the kind of mobility that is not a one-way ticket. So the researcher that goes to industry goes back to academia and then goes back again to industry, and can build, you know, an entire career with different interaction. Well, this is something that we are encouraging. This researcher entrepreneur that will not be not anymore a researcher and no, definitely an entrepreneur. This is also something that we recommended with the guiding principle with this industrial mindset. The industrial mindset was not about joining industry. It's innovative mindset. It was about finding opportunities and using them where they are. So to be open to different kind of activities. So yes, new KPI for sure. I know that colleagues dealing with research career assessment are fully aware of them and take them in consideration. And in the specific context of knowledge valorization, it is part of the picture now. And I know that for the next trip, these indicators will also be taken in account.
Thank you so much, Laurent. We've run out of time.
Yeah.
So thank you again for joining us today and for sharing everything that is coming, and it's coming very soon.
Yes.
There are still a lot of practical things to work out on how to actually do this, but I think I speak for the entire profession then when we say that we're ready to interact and to work with you to make this as workable as we possibly can.
Wonderful.
So we'll be very happy to stay in touch on this. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's time now for a break, and we will continue the program at 11:15.
We're live.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Mareike Gertz from Max Planck Innovation, and very happy to moderate the next session. We are hosting Dr. Catherine Burns, and I'm very pleased to quickly introduce her to you. She will give us an overview over the EU Life Science Strategy. So Dr. Catherine Burns is a senior expert life sciences in the Health Innovations and Ecosystems Unit at the European Commission's Director General for Research and Innovation since December 2024. She was trained a pharmacist and obtained her PhD in pharmaceutical sciences from the Catholic University of Louvain in Belgium. After having worked for the European Directorate for Quality of Medicine and Healthcare, she joined the European Commission in 2002 as a strategic officer in charge of rare diseases in the Health Directorate of the DG RTD. From 2012, she worked as a policy officer for pharmaceuticals in the then Directorate General Enterprise and Industry. From 2014, she held various positions at the DG RTD, including head of sector neuroscience, assistant to the DG RTD's Deputy Director General in charge of research programs, Deputy Head of Unit Strategy, Deputy Head of Unit Healthy Lives, and Deputy Head of Unit Combating Diseases. So we're very happy to welcome her today. And please, Catherine, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mareike, for the kind introduction. And it's really a pleasure to be with you today at this 10th ASTP Forum and to present you our strategy for European life sciences, which has been adopted on the 2nd of July. I will try and share my slides. Let's hope everything works well. Okay, I think you should see my screen.
Yeah, I'm
That's
able
okay?
to see it.
Perfect. Okay, so let's jump into the subject, and I would first like to emphasize that life sciences and their derived applications are really key to sustain the quality of life and well-being of people in the EU, including for our environmental quality, for our strategic autonomy and preparedness to crisis, and for accelerating also our twin digital and green transition. On these slides, I have put a few figures to illustrate how important life sciences are for a competitive Europe. And as you can see, the EU life science sector has a significant impact on the economy, with close to 20% of the total EU R&D business expenditure being dedicated to life sciences. And the sector has a 4 to 7% annual growth rate of GDP contribution, with a value added of 1.5 trillion euros. And this accounts for close to 10% of the EU GDP, which is quite substantial. The sector also is very important in terms of employment, as it provides 29 million jobs in the EU, which accounts for 13.6% of the total employment. Recent high-level reports, such as the Draghi report, provided recommendations to the EU to strengthen its internal market, competitiveness, crisis preparedness, and actually life sciences offer many opportunities to do this. Progress in life sciences is transforming key economic sectors such as health, food, agriculture, fisheries and forestry, biomanufacturing, and the environment. They are crucial to tackle challenges such as climate change, maintaining healthy populations, protecting and restoring our environment, and reducing the environmental footprint of products and of industry processes. And while life sciences are a field where the EU has so far been very strong, we currently witness some negative trends, and we are losing ground vis-à-vis international competitors, in particular the US and China, in actually bringing life sciences innovation to the market and profiting from life sciences research and innovation. If I can take the example of the health field, we see, for instance, that there is a decrease of the share of clinical trials performed in Europe, or that we are losing market share in products such as advanced therapy medicinal products. So in order to maintain our competitiveness and global leadership, we therefore need to take urgent action, and that is why we developed the strategy for European life sciences. The overall objective of this strategy is to position the EU as the world's most attractive place for life sciences by 2030, which is actually basically tomorrow. So realizing this vision will need coordinated action across the entire life sciences value chain. And that is from the early stages of research and innovation to market access and deployment, and also user uptake of safe and sustainable products and services. And the strategy proposes action in 3 interconnected phases, which all underpin what we have called the life science innovation journey. What does this journey mean in practice? First, we need to have an optimal research and innovation ecosystem in Europe where one can easily access existing resources, data, the tools and the expertise, and establish collaborations with various stakeholders and across sectors as necessary. And this should facilitate the rapid translation from science to innovative concepts and concrete applications, be them products or processes or services. But then, second, we need to make sure that there is smooth and rapid access to the market. And in this context, regulatory processes need to be looked at in detail. And finally, we need to make sure that the end users are ready for the uptake. And we see what's happening in other parts of the world with raising distrust in science. And for instance, a recent example is this rise of anti-vaccine campaigns that we have all seen. And therefore, it's really important to create a much stronger dialogue with citizens, not only to show what science brings, but also to better understand what are expectations and hesitations that the public might have. The strategy that we have adopted includes 27 actions, out of which 11 are flagship actions. And these are high priority initiatives which are intended to drive progress and contribute strongly to achieve the strategy's objectives. And you will see that we have a mix of actions that are rather broad concerning a number of areas, and also some actions which are very focused and are dedicated to address some challenges that we see in specific fields. And I will go through these actions with you now. The first leg of the innovation journey is about optimizing the research and innovation ecosystem. And there, the first part that we would like to achieve is about reinforcing the EU research and innovation. Our first action there is about a clinical research investment plan, which is in the make. And you all know that clinical research and clinical trials are very important to foster accessibility of innovative treatments to patients. And we have heavily supported this over the years through the framework programs for research and innovation. We have built clinical networks, we have built infrastructures, notably thanks to partnerships such as the Innovative Medicines Initiative, or more recently via our co-funded partnership, ERA for Health. But this area nevertheless still suffers from fragmentation, and there is certainly room for improvement. And we know that we have lost ground in this area vis-à-vis other jurisdictions, and we need to become more attractive to perform clinical research, facilitating access to the right expertise, right hospitals, and simplify the processes for such research to be conducted smoothly. In the field of advanced therapies, we see that Europe is very dynamic in terms of research and innovation, but the EU's share of the fast-growing global ATMP, so advanced therapy medicinal product market, is small. And we see that there exists a number of centers of excellence in the field across Europe, and the Draghi report recommends that we should build on existing innovation hubs and expand the capacity of the EU to conduct ATMP's research and development. So what we have in mind there is about establishing a European network of centers of excellence for advanced therapy medicinal products to increase the coordination, the collaboration, and R&D capacity across the member states. And this will be crucial to increase competitiveness in the area. Other action under the theme include a continued support, monitoring and evaluation of the implementation of clinical trials regulation, which would act in synergy with the forthcoming financial plan for clinical research. We do also have proposed a pilot for phased stepwise funding of collaborative research under the Horizon Work Programme 2026. And this will be to leverage results from past EU projects and accelerate the development of promising health technologies. Because we acknowledge the fact that the way we function now is it might be rather complicated for projects to find really a path and access to finances, especially we would like to facilitate that for projects that we have seen have been very successful, and we would like to offer that opportunity for this stepwise funding. And our pilot will specifically focus on regenerative medicine. Then our colleagues from DG GROW will also explore a pilot to identify and exploit collaboration opportunities between EU biotech clusters across the EU and focus on supporting the scaling up of their startups. And this action will, of course, make use of existing structures such as the European cluster collaboration platforms. And wherever possible, we would like to capitalize on structures that we have already been developing in the past. Then the second section in that first leg of the journey is about promoting a holistic approach to the life sciences. And what we have seen during the COVID pandemic was that we should really look at life sciences in a much more holistic way than we were doing. And this is certainly the case when it comes to promote One Health approaches in research and innovation. And we have done already a lot regarding the field of antimicrobial resistance. But it goes, of course, across other fields as well, and there are challenges because the human, animal, and environmental health areas have different disciplines. They use different vocabulary, so it's sometimes difficult to have a proper exchange and to address these three areas in a complementary way and synergistic way. So there needs to be more guidance regarding how to do One Health research in practice. And this would certainly facilitate the coordination among the related sectors, inter and transdisciplinary speaking. And ultimately, this should help tackle the fragmentation of policies that we see in life sciences. One area that would directly benefit from such an approach is the area of microbiomes, which are ubiquitous and bear promising potential in a number of applications. For instance, when it comes to crops that are more resistant to drought, or microbiome-based biomarkers, which highlight disease risk, the prognosis, or the response to treatment. We have also a section dedicated to climate change and health, because given the impact of climate change on human health and on the healthcare systems, we would like to increase efficiency in the generation of evidence across disciplines and countries, and this with a view to improving the adaptation and the resilience of individuals and communities. And in this context, we will implement a new strategic research and innovation agenda that was issued earlier this year. And we will also work to support the creation of a global research collaboration of research funders so as to support climate adaptation, mitigation, and resilience. Then we also do have an action regarding the development of a strategic research and innovation agenda on food systems, an area which is really at the interface of several sectors and disciplines, and where we see a high potential for increase in competitiveness. One cannot speak about life sciences without, of course, mentioning data and artificial intelligence, because life sciences are very much data-driven sciences, and they also generate an enormous amount of data. And this data is governed by a number of regulatory frameworks. And there are different interlocutors in the member states, various data formats, diverse data access regimens, and also, of course, personal data which coexist with non-personal data. And all this creates legal uncertainty, and it continues to limit the use of personal data for health purposes, for instance. So there, what we would like to propose is a European Life Science Research and Innovation Data Assembly. And this assembly will pull together the various authorities which are involved in implementing these various regulatory frameworks to see how we could achieve better harmonization and cross-regulatory cooperation in order to facilitate rapid research. Then we see that understanding and exploring both human and non-human biodata, including genomic and taxonomic data, is really an important component of life sciences. And linking non-human and human data would, for instance, be particularly important to advance the One Health approaches. So there, what we would like to do is really continue to support biodata resources, which we have been doing over the years, for instance, supporting infrastructures, hosting biodata, but we can make more out of these. And we should also be mindful regarding the maintenance of such infrastructures also globally, not only in Europe. And there we do have two actions for this purpose, one around the development and the population of strategic biodata resources and the access for European and global users, and another action regarding the European genomic data infrastructure, which is under the purview of our colleagues from DG Connect. And then, of course, we do have the enormous power of artificial intelligence that should be further supported in the field of life sciences. What we see already in our projects under the first cluster of Horizon Europe, so Cluster Health, is that many of the projects already incorporate artificial intelligence. And we do have dedicated topics for that purpose as well, such as, for instance, one on the integration of multimodal generative AI technologies into multidisciplinary biomedical research. Life sciences can also, of course, be a driver for industrial sustainability. Here we are talking about how biotechnologies can help us tackle climate change, biodiversity loss and pollution, for instance, by reducing soil degradation. We also need to become more resource efficient, including when it comes to using less water and energy in our industrial processes. And life science innovation can help reduce also Europe's dependence on the limited sustainable biomass that we have at our disposal. Actions under that section include support to R&I life science technologies for the development of new, more sustainable products, or for improving the efficiency of biomanufacturing and other industrial biotechnology processes, and for supporting bioremediation. We will also support the scaling up and the uptake of sustainable advanced fermentation, as well as research and innovation for bioeconomy solution and sustainable management of biomass. We are also talking about new approach methodologies that do not involve live animals, and how these can accelerate innovation, reduce the cost, and increase efficiency of industrial research and innovation. And taking the area of health, for instance, these methodologies can, for instance, help de-risk the preclinical phase of development, so that we lower the attrition rate at later stages. And industry can then innovate faster and cheaper and make research and development more sustainable. And that is really very important if we can have new methods that can really lower the difficulties encountered in clinical research, because it takes time and a lot of resources. So if we can already eliminate all the paths that will not lead to success, then that will really be very important. And of course, the use of less animals is also an important goal that we would like to achieve there. And we are, for such novel approach methodologies, working with member states, industry, academia, and regulators to support their development, their validations, and uptake for these new approach methodologies. We have budget set aside for that in our work program. And our colleagues from DG Connect are also pursuing the support to the next generation of virtual human twin solutions. For instance, they're using clinical research. Then for life sciences, a field which is really rapidly evolving, we need to ensure that we attract the best talents and adequately equip life scientists so they keep up with the rapid pace of development of life sciences. So for there, we really want to strengthen the skills and the careers of life scientists. And what we would like to do there is to capitalize on the activities that have been set up in the context of Choose Europe at EU level, but also in the member states, to attract and keep the best life scientists. And in the current context, this is a golden opportunity, and we would like to pursue our activities in this sense. What we will also do is have a more forward-looking stance and to finance a study to identify competencies and skills and training needs for life sciences in the future, including, for instance, for optimizing the uptake of artificial intelligence. And that will also give us a better view of what is needed in the future and how then we could reinforce those skills and careers in the futures. I now shift to the second leg of the innovation journey, which is about ensuring smooth and rapid access for life science innovations. And there we do have two parts. The first one being about the promotion of innovation responsive regulation, and the second one being about how we can unlock public and private investments. In Europe, we do benefit from high standards for quality, safety, and efficacy in life sciences, and these underpin public trust and ensure that innovations deliver real value for people. However, we all know that regulatory and administrative hurdles can significantly slow down the journey from idea to market, and they can drive up costs and create uncertainty, particularly for innovators and startups. So there, in terms of innovation responsive legislation, as you most probably know, we will table a Biotech Act still before the end of this year. And the biotech sector really plays a critical role in several areas of the EU economy. It's research-driven, fast-moving, and it requires substantial public and private investments. The Biotech Act will propose a series of measures to create an enabling environment to accelerate the transition of biotech products from laboratory to factory and to the market, while maintaining, of course, the highest safety standards for the protection of population and of the environment. We also know that there are challenges with the implementation of the medical devices and the in vitro diagnostics devices regulations, and there should be also some simplification put forward in that area still this year to facilitate the arrival of such technologies on the market. We also know that being faced with the regulatory landscape in Europe can be quite overwhelming, especially at the early stages of development. And early regulatory guidance for researchers and innovators therefore plays a critical role in the life science innovation journey. We would like to create an AI-powered interactive tool to help researchers and innovators navigate the EU regulatory landscape, complementing the information which is available to companies through the Biotech and Biomanufacturing Hub. And such a tool would also help users identify and access key information, data sets and tools such as infrastructures tailored to their specific needs in terms of innovation. For unlocking public and private investment, and we know that accessing investment is really a hurdle for startups which aim at scaling up their life science innovation in Europe. So we would like to facilitate the matchmaking between life science startups, industry and investors, so that these startups can pitch their potential technologies or products towards industries and investors. And for this, we will leverage the EIC, so the European Innovation Council portfolios of life science companies and the trusted investors networks and other stakeholders such as existing partnerships and networks. And actually the first meeting of these actors has already taken place in November and sounds very promising. So we will pursue the discussions in that sense for this particular action. Now, of course, all the activities would remain useless if ultimately there is no uptake of life science innovation by end users. So we really need to boost the trust, the uptake and use of life science innovation. And for this, we have a two-pronged approach. First, we would like to use public procurement to foster the uptake of innovation. And we know that the public sector needs innovative, sustainable solutions and also has the power to shape the solutions it needs and create markets. And this can be done via public procurement of innovative solutions. And this is a strategic tool to foster the uptake of innovations and to create opportunities for European companies to access markets and growth. Second, it's all about building public trust and outreach. And life science innovation significantly contribute to people's daily life and to individual and social well-being. However, trust in life sciences is not always guaranteed. And we have, for instance, seen how misinformation and disinformation fueled anti-vax positions during the COVID crisis, which I already mentioned before. So to foster public trust and the acceptance of technologies, people really must understand how life sciences work and how technologies may improve people's well-being. So R&I policymakers and industry players must also be better equipped to engage with the public and to pursue responsible research. Therefore, we will support life science stakeholders and policymakers by setting up a repository of tools and best practices in responsible research and innovation, risk and science communication, and pilot public outreach measures. Then finally, our very last action will be to set up a life science coordination group. And why do we intend to do so? Because everything which I mentioned before will need to be smoothly and consistently orchestrated. And there we were inspired by a number of member states which have such structures that allow for interministerial coordination on all matters which pertain to life sciences. And this is also something that many stakeholders have called for during the call for evidence that we issued in order to shape the strategy. So this group is currently being established as an internal structure in the Commission, and it should ensure the coherence between relevant policies, funding, and activities related to life sciences, so that the life sciences and their potential for innovation are taken into account across the board. The group will, of course, also monitor the implementation of the strategy, and it will also work with external actors to discuss, for instance, which areas should be looked at and where there are challenges or opportunities that are to be seized, so that we will organize for that purpose high-level topical discussion with stakeholders in order to keep touch with the evolution on the ground and potential needs and expectations that would be expressed. So, where do you see your role in all that? Because clearly we will not succeed in this endeavor, us, the Commission, alone, without having all stakeholders mobilized to turn this vision into reality, and leveraging effectively investments, expertise, and resources. And the success of the strategy for European life sciences really depends on the collective efforts of all of us. I think that in this context, your role, which is at the intersection of research and innovation, spotting the potential of new technologies and helping to transfer knowledge towards concrete applications, is really an important one. And you are as well an integral part of a well-functioning research and innovation ecosystem, and definitely should contribute to accelerate the life science innovation journey. I was wondering whether you're also somehow contributing to facilitating access to financing for the researchers and the innovators, and also whether and how you make the link between knowledge gathering and answering the needs of society. So I think you might have roles in the various sections and the various legs of the innovation journey. But I would certainly be pleased to exchange with you and to hear more about how you feel you could be involved and facilitate this innovation journey in the life sciences. So I will leave it at this, and yes, happy to receive your comments and your questions. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you very much. This is really a great overview. And maybe as a start, I can say that it really tackles the challenges that we also face in our daily business. I would suppose that a lot of questions could come up here on that topic, on different aspects. I mean, the strategy, life science strategy, is very broad, spanning really a lot of different technical fields in life science, which also face different challenges. Maybe just to start with your last question, if we also facilitate the access to financing. Of course, we do support scientists when they come up to write grants in order to get money for their further efforts. And also try to matchmake with investors if we have startup projects there. But a more coordinated approach or a broader network on this would definitely be helpful. And also there, I already have one question, because one of the typical challenges that we face, at least at Max Planck, because we are a basic research institution, we do see a lot of great ideas, but when we go to find a partner or even an investor, we typically receive the feedback, it's too early stage for really picking this up. And so sometimes not that much money is needed in order to really do one more translational experiment that would help to put the project on track towards its applicability in industry. It could be an in vivo experiment in pharma, or maybe a relevant plant in the food landscape, or maybe a prototype in med tech. And from our experience for this kind of experiments. It's not the big money that you need, but it's still too much to be covered by the budget of our scientists. So a little, some kind of little funding that would help to bridge this first gap along the multiple gaps that we face, unfortunately, in life sciences could be really helpful. We do already see it in the proof of concept grants that exist already, but they're not accessible to everybody. So maybe a little more, a broader funding would be very helpful here. And then also maybe towards what you mentioned, towards the food business, we do see that we get more support. So we lose a lot of projects towards the US simply because more funding is available, or at least it was in the past, might change now, but more funding was available, and people are much more open to try approaches and go the risk for establishing new technologies in order to make plants, for instance, drought resistant. So here, I think a lot of support would be helpful in terms of the steps you need to take in order to get the idea from the lab to the application, because the process is even slower than in pharma. But I think there are questions coming up. So there's one from Annette.
Yes, yeah, it's just following up on yours question during the first session, and you touched upon it as well, Mareike. This the issue with companies moving to the US because they have the easier access to funding. So it's really, are there any plans to make it easier and more favorable for later stage investors to be established in Europe?
Yeah, I think that clearly this is an issue that we have identified, and certainly not only in the field of life sciences, but in other fields as well. And you probably know already of the startup scale-up strategy and the various activities which are under development via this strategy. And I think this will really boost our opportunities here in Europe, because indeed that is something that we very often hear, that the landscape is way too complicated in terms of regulatory, but also in terms of access to finances in Europe, while in the US it's much leaner and much simpler. So we have a number of activities ongoing and proposed under different strategies, which should aim at doing just that. Facilitating the establishment of startups in Europe and then their scale up. And when it comes to specifically to life sciences, I mentioned this strategic interface that we created and that we hope will grow and stimulate investors. So really the idea is to put the various actors together so that there is a better realization of what is the potential and where money is and could be used to support the scale up for these companies and their innovations. So I think we have a number of activities that will be deployed over the coming years that will address this particular challenge, which is indeed quite a substantial challenge to address, because we are not operating with a single financial market also compared to the US. We are addressing 27 markets. So
Yes.
there as well, we will need to reflect with the single capital market that should facilitate definitely these aspects. I take note, Heike, from your comments regarding the sometimes little amount of money that would be needed as some sort of proof of concept then to be able to pursue the journey towards more industrial development. I think this is also one of the reflections that we had that at our level, at our European level, that we have such a number of excellent projects which are delivering, but that we don't have an easy way to propose them additional funding to pursue their development. So we are piloting, as I mentioned, in our work program now, and we will see where that leads us. But I think it will already be a help. And I also hear you when you say that not all funding might be accessible to everybody. I guess that you meant EU funding in that respect. I would certainly encourage not only to look at EU funding, but also at national funding, because if the amount is not that important, then you might also have possibilities at national level, which could help taking that step towards more the industry application. So you should look at various sources of funding, not only at EU level. And I think this is also an important message that I would like to pass here, is that the European Commission and the various programs that we have at our disposal will not alone be able to deliver on this strategy. So this is really something that we need to do together with the member states, and we are in contact with them on a number of actions to reflect together how we can do that. And if I take the Centers of Excellence for Advanced Therapy Medicinal Products, we have reserved now a bit of money in the coming years for reflecting on how to organize this network of centers of excellence. But the centers of excellence themselves, so the fact that you need to have this ecosystem of innovation around researchers, clinicians, small companies, the regulators, etc., who all need to work together. This is happening at national level, or even at regional level, or at local level. And this is something that the member states have under their direct purview. We are not designating centers of excellence in advanced therapy medicinal products. Member states might do that, or might decide to foster such centers and such ecosystem at a local level. So this is really something that we need to discuss, us, the European Commission and the member states, in really a European Union approach, a Team Europe approach. And the same stands for the stakeholders. They really need to explore all the possibilities for support, and not only from the EU. And what we have also been doing in the past are those seals of excellence, which we are pursuing, which are highlighting excellent projects which could not get funding because we didn't have enough funds at a European level, but which might then be taken up from national level. And these are the kind of things that that could help indeed these these projects that you see on your side as excellent, but that just need a little bit of money to pursue their path.
Definitely. Yeah, thank you for this explanation. There are great programs in Germany as well, but I was even referring to small amounts than you typically would apply for in these programs. So really, I would say quantities like anything between 50,000 to 200,000 euros maybe. And the typical programs you would apply for in Germany, you're aiming for higher quantities to take 2 or 3 further steps at the same time. So it was just a little bit of pocket money for people like
Understand.
researchers to really grasp whether the first idea that's coming out is worth pursuing or not. Yeah, so it's maybe more linked on our side. But there was another question coming up, and I think this is very helpful because it shows the complexity of the whole subject. Doris Koopman is asking is there an overview somewhere of the set of activities related specifically to improving the late stage funding situation, and if you could share a link if there is.
I don't think that we have yet posted anything related to that on our website, so I cannot share a link. But I think if you target the section dedicated to the regulatory aspects and then improving the financing in the strategy, you will find all the actions that are being currently developed which pertain to these aspects. And if there are specific questions, then I would encourage that you guys from ASTP channel that to us so that we can provide input there.
Okay, great. I don't see no further questions.
I have one.
Okay.
No, first a comment just to finish off, and then something slightly different. As you can probably see also, Katrin, from the questions, access to financing is part of what we do as professionals, and helping our academics and their spin-out companies to find at least the first investment is and syndicated investments and so on is certainly something that we do. So we're very happy to be involved and to bring the practitioner's point of view as well in the work that you have ahead of you on this. Absolutely.
That's very welcome, and I think I discussed already a little bit with the colleagues, but that definitely confirms what I was suspecting. So I will pass the message to the colleagues in charge, definitely, and thank you for proposing. That's very welcome. Thank you.
Yes.
And the next is a little bit of a shift in topic, but you touched upon also the and that is an issue in clinical research, and I think it's something that we spend a lot of time on, is how to find the right balance and how to manage the personal data that are inevitably involved in doing clinical trials. So I think anything that you can possibly do to simplify and coordinate across Europe to make those regulations or that we need, we absolutely need them, and I think it's nice that we have them in Europe. But they are cumbersome and add, you could say, a level of administrative effort onto these projects that we do spend. It's complex and we spend a lot of time on it. So any framework things or guidelines or guidances or anything that can help cut some of the processing time on getting the documentation and the agreements that we need on processing personal data in clinical trials would be hugely beneficial. I think, to the speed at which we're able to do clinical research.
Okay, I think that this is really something that we have heard for quite a number of years now. And I would say that there is hope on the horizon.
Sounds very promising.
So first, I would like to mention that the European Data Protection Board is currently reflecting on guidelines for the use of personal data for research purposes. So that is one. I know these are the member states' authorities. They've been discussing this for years, really years. But I think we are close to coming to possibly guidelines on that. So stay tuned. There might be something coming from that side. Then I mentioned that the clinical trials regulation is being looked at regarding its implementation, and there might be simplification also coming from that respect. Again, quite rapidly, I would like to invite you to stay tuned to next week's activities at the European Commission and the health package, which is being prepared. So have a look there. Of course, there are the accelerating clinical trials initiative that we have in place at the level of EU together with member states, which are discussing certain difficulties and trying to find ways around these best practices. And for instance, when it comes to ethics approval, which is under the purview of member states, how to go quicker in that. So there could also be some simplifications and ideas for member states to have streamlined process coming from that side. And then, of course, we are currently preparing this clinical research investment plan. I would also like to invite you to stay tuned to this initiative before the end of the year. We expect to consult broadly, but cannot say exactly when, but the idea would be, yes, indeed, before the end of the year, and if not early next year. So there are a number of activities ongoing which should simplify. This is a recognized difficulty which needs to be erased somehow. And I must say that for the many years that I have been around, I am rather hopeful that this will streamline, because it is possible, but as you say, it takes time. So there we need to be quicker.
Mm-hmm. Great, I can only second this because that's also one of the things we struggle a lot with. And then maybe just one last remark from my side. It's also regarding the regulation processes. I just saw the latest figures regarding best-in-class pharmaceuticals. That now China has surpassed Europe. We are still very good in very new, innovative drugs coming to the market, but also there apparently it's a little slowing down. So we are definitely losing ground. And one of the things that we see is when a startup picks up a project and wants to develop this further, they really start to struggle with the regulations they need to consider very early stage on. They have to spend a significant amount of money on consultancy and everything else, and also on time in order to really find their way through this jungle and make sure that they're spending the effort on the right experiments in the right amount of time. So anything that would help to streamline this process and make it much more customer friendly, especially to young startups that don't have these kind of in-house consultants and definitely no experience, would be of great help also to speed up the whole process of development.
Yes, as I mentioned, this AI-powered tool, which we intend to develop to point to the regulatory framework which needs to be respected for certain types of, depending on what you are developing as innovations. And that should also help us identify early the borderline products, which we see more and more. Because yes, if you're really innovative, then maybe you will not fall clearly under one particular framework. So that could also be a way for us to identify these cases early on. And I would certainly encourage the developers to take scientific advice as early as possible from the regulatory agencies. And there are a number of strands that are offered, ways by which the regulators offer such scientific advice. And I think that this is certainly something that needs to be embraced as early as possible. And regulators are, I think, very open to such discussions, at least in the health area.
Mm-hmm. So I'm very sorry, Anna, we almost used up all your time, so I will quickly pass over to you.
Thank you.
Remarks.
Thank you, Marijke, and thank you, Katrien, for giving us the insight into all the many things that are happening in life sciences. It's very, very exciting.
Welcome. Thank you for inviting us.
Just very quickly, final comments. We do see that there is still a lot happening at the European level that includes us and our profession. And that is exciting. A lot of initiatives that are still going on. Can only encourage that you take the opportunity to interact in all the consultations and everything that events and everything that is going on. Because of this, all of this activity that brings our profession really center stage in Europe's future. It's a small thing, but we are launching a European-centered ASTP newsletter early next year to enable you to keep on top of all the topics that are coming out of the European Union, and will also be promoting all the consultations and highlighting things that are happening. So we hope you'll support and sign on for this. I'd also like to thank all of you attendees because you have chosen to spend a morning with us at ASTP and updating yourselves on the European activities. And a huge thank you also to my co-moderators today, to Robert and Marijke and to Hannah, and to our President Art for joining us. And last but not least, again, a thank you to ASTP HQ. Today specifically, it's Carla and Anwar. We couldn't do this without you guys, so thank you so much for supporting us in a very informative and interesting morning. So I wish you all a very nice continued day and a very happy end of 2025. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.